The Switch 2 cartridge situation has been dicey, to say the least. It's certainly been unpredictable at times. While you have full on the cartridge games like these, they're not exactly cheap. $70, $80 even, so that everything's on a 64 gigabyte cartridge. And as we're seeing with more and more third parties, they're opting for game key cards that, yeah, they can get them a bit cheaper for release, but it's not on the cartridge itself. It has to call to a server to then download all the data, taking up a fair amount of space on your Switch 2, whether it's the internal storage or the SD card. But now something interesting has happened and everyone's trying to figure out how, and that would be games like these that are $30. This is the first one I've seen so far. Mio Memories in Orbit, released recently on the Switch 2 physically, and you'll notice not a game key card like you would expect. Now I say that because this is half the price that Street Fighter was when it came out last year, but this is fully on the cartridge. Mio is $30, and somehow they've done it. And you know what? That's what we're gonna try to figure out here today, because yes, like we've done with many of these other games, we'll cut this open and see what we're dealing with on the inside. So if you guys enjoy the video, hit the like button, subscribe if you're new. Now, I saw this pop up on Game Pass when it released, was that a few months ago now? And I did see that it was coming to the Switch 2, but I wasn't expecting it to be all on the cartridge. I figured it would be a game key card. So it certainly caught my interest because of this situation with the cartridges. And since we believe, just based on hearsay and reports and discussions, that the cartridge that Nintendo has opted for, the 64 gigabyte cartridge at launch, would cost anywhere $15, $20, somewhere in that mark, right? I'm sure it's all over the place. There's a range that's varying between with how DRAM prices are at storage, and I'm sure it's only gotten more expensive since launch, right? So clearly there has to be some kind of strategy to move off of that, and potentially that's what we're about to see here. So here's the cartridge, looks pretty standard. And so let's immediately take a look at the front here, because we do have codes on the front. All right, so we have at the bottom here, you can see indicators and codes. So we at least do have a different code to go off of here on the front. But of course, I'm curious to see what we have in terms of the chip inside. Even on the back, I mean, it looks pretty similar. The code on the back is a bit different. That could be more just like identifiers for the game itself or anything. So let's start cutting it open. Usually I start at like a corner and then kind of work its way around and then sort of peel it open. I try to keep both sides of this, because it's split in two, right down the middle, all the way around the sides. If you just get them clean break across there, you can easily glue it back together without any real issues, as I've done with things like Mario Kart here. It works no problem. So I am not actually destroying the game, just opening up here for a minute. And we have a pretty clean pull, no issues there. And our main chip, the top part, it's flipped around like this. The top part's generally hollow. It's a lot of wasted space, really. Now I'll get a nice zoom in here on this so we can just get a look at the codes on the front. The top would just still be the same indicator that's on the front of the label for the game. Really, I'm just interested in the bottom two rows and seeing if we can compare that to some of the other chips that we've come across, specifically the 64 gigabyte cartridge.
To make this easy, I went ahead and lined up the Mario Kart chip and the Mio chip. We know Mario Kart being a confirmed 64 gigabyte cartridge. Nintendo helped us with that, of course, by making it $80, but in general, it's all on the cartridge. It was like the baseline, especially when it came to first-party releases for Nintendo at launch. And then to its right, we have Mio. So I was looking at these chips, trying to see if there was any obvious comparison here that can give us indication as to the size of this Mio cartridge, because it only makes sense that it would be smaller or just less expensive. I mean, Mio is a $30 game at retail. Digitally, though, it is $20, so it is $10 more to come to retail here. So it still costs something to put it on a cartridge, even if it's smaller. Now, the top line, as we saw, it matches what's on the front of the cartridge sticker. So that's just kind of the indicator, I believe, for the game or the publisher, what have you there, sure. But it gets more interesting in this middle line. Even this bottom line here, while originally it's like, oh, 512, well, that lines up, divided by 8, 64. Okay, 64 gigabyte. Now it kind of looks like that's a lot number, or this is just something in production that they use, because 606 does not match up to anything I would think of when it comes to standard sizes that you would see. So I mean, with the Switch 1, they were all over the place. It was like there's a really really small one. I think there was 1 gigabyte or less, and there's like 8 gigabytes, 16 gigabyte, 32 gigabytes. So you kind of going up in those increments. This does not match up at all. So it really comes down to this center line here. And there are a few things you can have, for example, speed that's maybe indicated here, but I mean, just the first few digits do match up. So that looks about standard there. Even towards the back of it, you have H and 01 or 00. All that to me seems to line up like a 600H, 601H. The front R20R, right? Like all that looks about the same in terms of the manufacturer, sure. The thing that really sticks out to me though is G6 and G4, these two here. And the issue, of course, we're going off of here is these markings. If you look them up or try to figure it out, it's not like publicly available necessarily. So we are sort of going through this, looking, trying to compare, almost like trying to figure out a new language or something that's not defined. So to me, looking at this G4 and G6, that would sort of indicate potentially the different tiers in terms of storage size. And so I think about G4, G5, G6, but Mio, because the file size is so small, it's not required to have a 32 gigabyte cartridge. I mean, it's not required to have a 64 gigabyte cartridge. And the fact that they get this out at $30, it does make me think that we're either looking at a 16 gig or a 32 gigabyte cartridge. 32 only because that would be, I mean, that'd be a step down from 64, obviously. It'd still be expensive, but that would kind of be the best case scenario there versus 64. I think the 16 would actually make sense because not only do we have Mio that's releasing now, right, all in the cartridge, Mouse PI for Hire, that's coming up as a physical release at $40. So you kind of see, and that's a 14 gigabyte game on the Switch too, so it would fit on the 16 gig cartridge. It kind of lines up in my mind that we're looking at a 16 gigabyte cartridge, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that it is a 32 gigabyte cartridge as well. Still, though, yes, it does look like we have a chip here with Mio that is different from the 64 gigabyte chip that we've had up until this point with many of these first party releases from Nintendo, the 64 gigabyte cartridge, and then also some different third party games. All right, like we saw with Cyberpunk, right? So this is good news to me, just that we're actually seeing this stuff get out into the marketplace, because it means, one, it's possible, but two, it just means we could see indie titles or just smaller games that don't need 64 gigabytes and the massive cost associated with it just to release their game onto retail store shelves. And then it plays into the idea of less game key cards. Still, it's not cheap necessarily to do this, so I understand game key cards still gonna exist. Shocker. But pretty cool to see, and I wanted to get these images out there just in case maybe you have a better idea as to what we're seeing here with these different chips. But let me know what you guys think, though, down below in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.